Okay. Well, good afternoon and welcome to IvyLearn Content Partners webinar series. Today we're talking with Cengage and how to integrate their products into the IvyLearn platform. Joining us today as our guest presenter is Delilah Wilson, who's the representative for Cengage. She'll be guiding us through the process and giving us a live demonstration in the IvyLearn platform. Myself, as well as Lisa Steckdorn, are helping to facilitate the question box. So you are welcome to enter your questions or any concerns that you may have in the question box, and we'll either feed those to Delilah during her presentation, or we'll try to answer those for you in the question box. So without further ado, thank you, Delilah, for being here, and we'll turn over presentation rights to you at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello everybody. I am going to go ahead and show my screen and then we'll just jump right into today's training session that's going to focus on how to implement Cengage materials into your Canvas shell. So again, my name is Delilah Wilson, and as far as today's agenda, we'll be mentioning, we won't necessarily go through the steps, so we'll be talking about how it's possible to export your Blackboard course package if you've already taught a course before in Blackboard and you want to use that as your starting point. We'll also just be talking about how it is possible to import that Blackboard course package into Canvas. We'll be talking about how if you have an existing Cengage course, whether that be in MindTap or SAM, how you can get that into Canvas. You can also start from scratch. And we'll be talking about how do you link your Cengage assignments into Canvas. There's also a new student registration process for those of you who are familiar with the process within Blackboard. It's changed slightly within Canvas. And then, as always, there will be Q&A throughout the session. So feel free to use the chat session or ask questions throughout the call. And either Lisa or Kathy will just let me know, you guys, if there are questions, if I don't notice them. Okay, for those of you who may decide to start with your Blackboard shell because you're going to export that shell out of Blackboard and import it into Canvas as a starting point, do know that there are some known issues that have been identified with those Blackboard packages. So not all of your content may translate into that Canvas shell. For example, there may be issues with zip files. There may be some broken attachments, wikis, or blogs. They're not recognized by Canvas, so those are not going to transfer over from Blackboard. And also sometimes with that transfer from Blackboard to Canvas, there may be some issues with like some extra gradebooks in or categories. So with that being said, you'll need to think through, if you taught a course in the past in Blackboard, you'll need to think through whether or not you want to use that Blackboard course and bring it over into Canvas, or if you're just going to start completely from scratch within Canvas. Whether or not you start from scratch or whether or not you import, you're still going to have to reload your Cengage materials into Canvas. And the bulk of this training will be focusing on that, even though we'll just kind of start off with that if you're starting from the point within Blackboard. Okay, as I mentioned, the Cengage content is going to have to be imported into the Canvas shell regardless of your starting point. And we will be talking about that next. So with that being said, let's just kind of go live. Again, for some of these steps, I'll just be showing you in general, and then we're going to jump right into Canvas. So first, let's assume that you taught a Blackboard, a section in Blackboard in the past. And I recognize that we may have some individuals on today's call that maybe you don't have an existing Blackboard shell, and that's fine. We'll show you how to get things set up in Canvas even if that's the case. So let's assume you did have a Blackboard shell and you wanted to start with that shell as your starting point because you're going to bring that over into Canvas. As most of you may already know, within Blackboard, under the Packages and Utilities area, there is the option to export or archive your course. So if you go to export your course, there will be a button here that indicates that you can export a package. And then you have the option to select certain, either all components from your Blackboard package or certain components. Since you know that certain items may not transfer over without issues into Canvas, you may decide that you're only going to select certain pieces. So for example, since I know that wikis and blogs don't transfer over, I wouldn't want to select that. Maybe I'm just going to start off with my course information, my resources or instructor resources, and my discussion board. Maybe those are the only components that I want to bring over into Canvas. So it's entirely up to you which areas you want to export from Blackboard. Once you've decided, you would just click on Submit, and you're going to receive a message indicating that the process has started. And then once that process completes, you'll see a link that gives you access to the zipped Blackboard package that you will then later import into Canvas. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this to download it to my downloads. And now I'm ready to go into Canvas to get started with building my course. One point of clarification, this particular training is for individuals who are going to be building out your own Canvas course. If you're using one of the statewide online shells, if you're teaching one of those courses, do note that those statewide online courses have standardized courses that have already been pre-developed. So you're not going to have to load any Cengage content into those courses. That will already be done for you. But if you're not teaching a statewide online course and you need to build out your course on your own, then this training is for you. Okay, so at this point in time, I am logged into Canvas. I am in my course shell. And if I am an instructor who has decided to import that Blackboard package into Canvas, I'll show you how you can do that. I think I see a message in the chat, so I'm just going to see. Oh, so there's a message in the chat saying that the instructional technology team does not recommend importing courses from Blackboard. Okay, so, all right, so if that's not recommended, then perhaps we'll just skip over this part entirely. So let's assume that you're ready to bring in your Cengage content. The first thing you want to do is you need to make sure that the Cengage menu is listed here in this navigation area. Currently, I do not see it listed, so what I want to do is make it visible to me. In order to do that, I am going to go out to the settings area. By clicking on settings, I'm able to access this navigation tab. Within the navigation tab, this is where I can choose to make certain items available on this menu here. So at the very bottom, there are items that are hidden that I can drag and drop to the top to make sure that they're visible. And one of those items would be the Cengage tool. So by dragging and dropping this will allow for me as the instructor to import different Cengage content directly into my Canvas course. So I'm going to just go ahead and drag and drop that. You want to make sure that you save your changes. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now, once I click Save, you'll notice that this Cengage option now appears in the menu here. Okay, so by clicking on this Cengage item, as the instructor, this is going to allow for you to access Cengage content depending upon the textbook that you're using. It's important to mention that this Cengage tool that I just added, students will not see this. This tool is strictly for the purposes of instructors to allow for you to import Cengage assignments or activities directly into your Canvas modules. Again, students will not see this. I'm going to go ahead and click on this Cengage tool, which I've clicked on this in the past. The first time you click on this, you will be prompted to enter in your Cengage login credentials. This is typically your Ivy Tech email address will be your username, and then you would put in the password that was created for you when your Cengage account was first set up. This is not your Ivy Canvas password. This is a totally separate password that's specific to Cengage Learning. If you don't know your username and password, there is an option to reset your password. And currently, I'm not seeing that screen because I've already gone through the process of entering in my Cengage credentials. Once you do that process one time, you will never be prompted to enter in your Cengage credentials again. It's a one-time single sign-on process. Okay? So I've added the Cengage tool here. I've gone in to click it, and now I'm going to see a list of textbooks that are available. So from here, you can select your book. There are quite a few books listed in here, so if you just wanted to narrow down the choices, you can just type in this search field by the keyword, like the title of your book or the author of your book, and you're going to see the textbook listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that for this course, this is the textbook that, so let's assume for the purposes of this training, this is the textbook that you were using. So you're going to go ahead and select that course. At this point in time, you will be prompted to create a Cengage course. In this particular case, this is a MindTap course, but you may be teaching using SAM. Just depending upon the product that you're using from Cengage, you're going to be prompted to create a course. Okay, and I'm just continuing to monitor the chat for questions. So right now, I don't think I have any questions. All right, so now I'm at the point in time where it's asking for me to create a MindTap course. You have a couple of options. So let's assume that you have taught this course in the past, even if you taught it within Blackboard. So you may already have a MindTap course or this book, but the course was previously taught in the past within Blackboard. If that's the case, you still have the option to indicate that you want to copy from one of your existing courses, because ultimately that MindTap or SAM course is associated with your Cengage login credentials. So you will be able to choose from copy from existing. If you've never taught this course in the past and you don't have an existing course, then you're just going to choose the option to create a new MindTap course or a new SAM course, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and do today. So I'm going to say I'm creating a brand new MindTap course, and it's just going to ask for me to name my MindTap course. I like to use the same name that is, I like to be consistent and use the same IvyLearn course name. So if this is the name of my course within IvyLearn, then this would be the name that I would use for MindTap, just to be consistent. And then you're going to go ahead and put in your actual course start date. So let's assume your course started in May. You could go in and choose May as your start date. You want to be sure to use your actual course start date, because we do offer a grace period for students where they are allowed up to 2 weeks of trial access. So even if they don't have their textbooks, if they don't have an access code, they'll still be able to get into the program. And that trial access is going to be based upon your course start date. So you don't want to start your course a week or two earlier than when it actually starts, because that's going to impact or shorten students' length to that trial period. So let's assume my course started May 9th and it ends like August the 11th. So here's my course start and end date. As I mentioned, we give the students up to 2 weeks of trial access, and the formula for that trial access typically is for every week that you teach that course, we give the student 1 day of access. So if you're teaching an 8-week course, there's going to be 8 days of access. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and select my time zone, and then I'm going to click continue. And basically what this does is it creates a link to this MindTap course that I'm creating, and it places that link directly into my IvyLearn module. So now, if I were to go out to the modules area, and I scroll to the very bottom, I already have some modules set up in this course, but so if I scroll down to the very bottom, you can see for that link that I just created for MindTap that I labeled CINS 101 Cengage Demo, it places that link directly at the bottom. Now, if I wanted to make this more obvious to my students, I can always edit the title of this link. So I can do that by clicking on this drop-down menu next to the cog, and it gives me the option to edit. And let's assume I just want to call this my MindTap homepage. And if you were teaching SAM, you call it SAM homepage. So whatever Cengage product that you're using, you would just name this link appropriately. I'm going to go ahead and click update. And now, if I were to click on this link, or if students were to click on this link, it tells them to load this in a new window, but once they launch it, it's going to take them directly out to that particular area within Cengage. So since I just created my course, this is basically taking the students out to the course homepage. So that's step one. Step one is just first creating your course. Now, obviously, within this course, I have all of my different assignments. So let's say for this chapter 2, you can see I have some assignments here. So your next step would be to decide which assignments you want to bring directly into Canvas or into IvyLearn, and which assignments you want to go into which modules. So let's assume for these chapter 2 activities or assignments here, I wanted to place these activities directly into module 2 of IvyLearn. So I'm going to just go ahead and close out of this MindTap window, and I'm going to go back to IvyLearn. So currently, when we're looking at IvyLearn, you can see that this module 2, I just kind of have some place markers in here with an overview for my course, but I haven't loaded my Cengage content into it yet. So I'm going to do that in one moment, but I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions in the chat right now.
Hi, Delilah. If you could scroll down to where you added that link just a moment ago.
Sure. And you're probably going to mention the publish.
I am, and this is something that will catch faculty every time. So not only do we have to publish, which is a new IvyLearn vocabulary term, and it means to make available. So publish means to make available. And you'll notice where Delilah just added that MindTap homepage, it was a black cloud with an X in it, meaning that it was not published or made available to students. So see, it's now unpublished, and when she clicks that link, she'll need to publish that item. And if you go up to the top where it says Vermont Enhanced Discovering Computers MindTap, you'll notice that that module actually isn't available either. If you go across to the right-hand side of the page, you'll see that that is not published either. So you have to make sure your modules are published as well as each individual item. And to do that, you just click the little cloud, and when it turns green with a question mark, or excuse me, a check mark, then you know it's available to students. If in doubt, you could always go to the student view. And to do that, Delilah, if you don't mind, go to the course menu under settings.
Okay.
So click on settings, and then over on the right-hand side in our sidebar content, there's the student view button. And this is going to be your best friend being new to the IvyLearn platform. So when you're in student view, a big bright purple bar comes across the top or down the bottom to let you know that you're in student view. and then you can see what the student sees. So this is a great new easy way if a student says that they're not seeing an assignment for whatever reason or not seeing a document. You can always go in the student view and click on the module and see what they would see. Or you can actually go into, in your instructor view, to that module area or the content area and see if that little cloud has been published or not. So just a quick little tip for you on how that might work.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. Okay, so we're in the student view, and that was a helpful, very helpful tip about publishing. So you want to make sure if you want students to see those activities that that cloud is green. So I'm going to go ahead and leave out of this student view. And as Sarah mentioned, if you're kind of looking at these modules here, you want to make sure that the module is published, because if the module is unpublished, then even if an item within that module is published, the students won't be able to see it because it lives within a module that's not published. All right, so I already have a module 2 here, but let's just not make the assumption that you know how to create a module. So let's assume, I'm going to go ahead and delete this module actually. So let's assume I did not have a module 2. And I needed to create a module 2 because I'm going to add some Cengage activities to that module. So at the very top of the page, you'll see this option to add a module. I'm going to go ahead and click on that plus symbol to add a module. I'll name my module. So I'm going to go ahead and name this module 02 to be consistent. And, you know, there are some prerequisites you can set, but that's more of an advanced. If you just want to make sure that the module is visible to the students from day one, you're just going to go ahead and name that module, click Add Module. It typically adds it at the very bottom, but you can always just hover your mouse over these little handles here, and then this will allow for you to drag and drop that module to whichever area you would like for it to appear. Okay, so now we have a module 2 in here. Obviously, at this point in time, the module is empty. And what I like to do is bring over some of those Cengage assignments so that students, they can access those materials. As opposed to going out to the MindTap homepage, they can go directly to Module 2 to access their assignment. So you always want to remember, anytime you want to bring any Cengage content over, you as the instructor would click on this Cengage tool here. Again, students don't see this Cengage tool, only you, the instructor, see this. And now, I want to go ahead and go back to my textbook. This was the textbook that I selected earlier. Now you will see that there's this message that lets me know that I'm linked to a course because I've actually already gone through that course creation process. So this time when I click on the book, instead of being prompted to create a course, it recognizes that I already have a course, and that course already contains Cengage assignments. So what I'd like to do is I am going to expand that Chapter 2 folder because, as you can recall, I indicated that I wanted to bring content over into my Module 2. And then from here, I'm just going to select the boxes of the items that I want to bring over into Canvas. You'll notice for the graded activities, to the far right of those graded activities, there is an Add to Gradebook menu here. So as long as these boxes are checked, this is going to automatically create gradebook columns within IvyLearn for these 2 particular items. So the points were already set within the MindTap side of things. This training is mostly focused on how you bring over your Cengage content. It's not necessarily getting into like how you go in and customize your MindTap course or your SIM course. But at the end of this training, I'll definitely make sure you have access to resources that show you how to do that. So we're going to assume that you want to bring this content over into IvyLearn as is. So I'm going to select these 4 items, click on Confirm My Selection, Now, I only selected 4 items, but if you wanted to bring everything in at one time, then you would just go in and you would select everything that you wanted to bring over. But for the sake of this training, I am only going to focus on just this Chapter 2 content. So I went ahead and I selected my 4 items that I want to bring over into IvyLearn. I click on Confirm Selection, and now I'm just going to go ahead and click Save. When I do that, it's letting me know that it's importing my content, and it's going to redirect me back to IvyLearn. And if I go back to my modules, remember, anytime you bring something over, it drops it down at the very bottom. Now, when the Cengage content is brought over, it brings over this little menu item here that lets you know what date you imported it on. You can get rid of that if you didn't want to see that. So to remove it, I just clicked on this arrow by the cog, and I'm clicking on Remove to get rid of that. So I'll get rid of this one here too. So here are those 4 links that I just brought over. By default, they're brought over and they are not published. If I want for students to be able to see these, obviously I need to click on this green cloud to publish them. So now all 4 of those items are brought over. Initially, when the materials are brought over, they're placed into this module at the bottom, but just like anything else in here, you can always just drag and drop it to place it in the appropriate module. Or if you find that it's quicker just for you to click on this cog here, you'll have the option to just click Move. Let's see, there's Move. And then I can move it to the module of my choice. So if I want to bring this stuff in, this particular item into Module 2, I'll select Module 2 and click Move. And now if I were to look up in Module 2, here's that item here. Now, as I mentioned, when I selected these items, it automatically brought over a gradebook column for this particular item. So if I were to go out to my grades and look into the grade center for that training, and I think the other activity was either a project or an exam, here are the gradebook columns that were automatically created for me. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment and take a peek in the chat. Okay. So let me backtrack and go back to the main page of my course. So far, we talked about when you first start off, the first thing you want to do is make sure this Cengage item is listed here. And you do that by going out to your settings and dragging and dropping that tool. When you first click on this Cengage item, we've talked about how you will be prompted. You will be prompted to enter in your Cengage Learning login credentials. That's just a one-time process. Once you complete that, you'll never have to do it again. And moving forward, anytime you're ready to bring Cengage content over, whether it be to create your initial course or whether it be to link out to specific assignments, you're just going to come out and select your book, and then you'll be able to select the appropriate content. Now, one of the other things that I want to mention in here, typically within this content selector, you are going to find a link that will allow for your students to access Cengage technical support. So as always, students are going to be new to Canvas. Maybe some students are going to be new to using Cengage for the first time. So sometimes there's a learning curve. In order to ensure that your students are able to talk to the right people for support, I would recommend strongly that you place this link in here. And so let me go ahead and select this link and click Confirm Selection. And this is just going to allow for my students to contact Cengage support if they need any assistance. Typically, when they click on that link, it's just going to ask them some basic information. Once they fill out the form, it provides them with a case number and with a telephone number that they can call into should they want to speak with someone immediately. But the first step is to have the students actually file a support case. So if you have like a resources area or a getting started area in your course, however you structure your materials, I recommend that you make this Cengage support support link available to the student. Now, earlier today, we did go out to the student view. So let's go ahead and go out to that view again so that we can talk about the registration process. But before we do that, I want to invite those of you who may have questions to go ahead and write them in the questions or the chat window, because I know we've kind of gone through quite a bit. So if you have questions, this would be a great opportunity to do that prior to us going out to that student view.
Thank you, Delilah. This is Kathy Long. Bonnie has left us, but she had the question, does it place the grades in the grade center in the order?
So does it, when you bring them over, are they brought over in sequential order? Like,
yes, how does it appear in the grade center?
So when you're in that content selector, the order in which you selected it, that's the order that is going to bring it over. So when I'm in this Cengage tool and I am clicking on my content here, like if I select this one first, then that's the order it's going to bring that content over. So if you want it, so if I wanted this to appear in a certain order, then I would select it in the order I want it to appear. Obviously, once it gets into the Canvas gradebook, you can always also just change the Canvas gradebook. You can organize it, reorganize it within the Canvas gradebook.
Do these individual assignments have due dates assigned to them?
So currently, these individual activities do not have due dates assigned to them. And if you want to assign due dates to these activities, then you would do that directly from the Cengage side of things, because ultimately the students, when they launch these activities, they're being taken to that activity directly within Cengage. So for example, if a student were to click on this SAM exam concept, it takes them out to Cengage. With that being said, that's where you're going to set the dates for these activities. Typically to set the dates, and again, right now we're looking at a MindTap course. It's going to be different for SAM, but I'll just kind of walk you through the steps in general. So for MindTap, to set your date, you want to make sure you're on the MindTap homepage, which I am on the MindTap homepage here. For those of you who are familiar with MindTap, you can see that there's this kind of a unit view here. So this is kind of showing activities by date, which we don't have any due dates at this point. I'm sorry, this first view was the week view. The second view is the unit view. And this final view is a date manager view. For MindTap, this is the easiest way to set your date. So you can either click on these individual calendar icons here. So I can set an available the date that the students would actually be allowed to open or start this assignment. And available and due dates are optional within MindTap. You don't have to set them, but if you wanted to, you can come in and just set your dates. So that's how you would set the dates one at a time. If you wanted to select multiple activities, you can do that as well. So let's assume I checked these 3 items, and then up here on this menu, this is where I would go in to set any date, and I just want to click apply. Now obviously right now, as I mentioned, we're looking at MindTap. We're not looking at SAM. If you wanted to set due dates within SAM, that's a different process, and let's see if I can just show that really quickly without getting too sidetracked. So we're going to assume that you have a link to SAM. So you've already gone through the process of setting up SAM, your SAM course within Canvas. Here we go. And just to speed things up, I'm just accessing SAM directly, but you would always access SAM through Canvas. But let's assume that you've placed a link to the SAM homepage within your Canvas course. So if you were in Canvas, in your modules, you would have already created a SAM course. So just like how in this particular course, I have a link out to the MindTap homepage, you would have a link to your SAM homepage. And when you click on that link to the SAM homepage, you have the option to go to your assignments area. And next to each assignment, there is this edit tool. And by clicking on the edit tool, this is what's going to allow for you to go in and specify any due dates for those activities. So again, you want to make sure you are controlling the available or due dates for your activities directly within the Cengage platform, because ultimately those assignments are managed by Cengage. Any other questions?
Hi, Delilah. This is Kathy Long. I'd like to just take over for just a moment to show a couple things in our IvyLearn platform. We have some questions about how things appear in the Grade Center, and I also need to talk about assigning due dates for just a moment. So if you don't mind, I will give you back control in just a moment.
Okay.
All right. So folks, I had a question. Can we organize the order in the Grade Center like we do in Blackboard? And the answer is really no. So right now I'm in the IvyLearn platform, and I'm going to go into my demonstration course, and I'm going to go into the Grade Center. This week in our statewide training events, we are talking about the Grade Center and Speed Grader, so look for that webinar registration link, or feel free to watch the presentation for more details. But when we go into the Grade Center, on the course menu, we have grades. This is how students and faculty access the Grade Center. It will automatically recognize the role of the person clicking the Grade Center. So obviously we're in the instructor view. The students would only see their individual grades in a list form. Okay, so in the Grade Center, there are two ways that you can organize your content, and you do that over here on the far right-hand side in this little cogwheel, and there's a little pull-down menu. So you can arrange columns by due date, which is my current view, or by assignment group. So when I select assignment group, you'll notice that my Grade Center changed. So I have categories set up in my class. So here are all my discussion boards, and then you'll notice we go into different exams and lab assignments, and then there's also homework assignments. So I can view this by due date, or I can view this by category. And those due dates and those categories are set up when you create your content. Okay, so if you're taking a course or using a course from the statewide online library of courses, and there's over 350 of those courses in there, typically online, but you can use most of those in a hybrid or traditional environment. Okay, if you're using that content, usually those dates have already been kind of established for you when you're using third-party content, such as our Cengage MindTap or SAM. Okay, but it is policy now that all faculty, regardless of how they're teaching, we need to make sure that we're using that calendaring tool and that we're using those due dates. And the reason is IvyLearn is completely ran on due dates. So when we log into IvyLearn, and we get that dashboard page by default, you'll notice on the right-hand side of the page, there's this to-do list. Okay, so this is a global view of all the courses that I'm enrolled in. This appears to me as a student and also as a faculty member, and it has due dates. Okay, so your to-do list is set up on due dates, and students can access this need-to-know information right now. They can go directly into that assignment, and you can too as an instructor. You'll notice too in my instructor view, I have these little circles with a 1 in it, 2 in it, and a 1 in it. Again, this is how I know that something needs grading. Okay, so I can click on this, it will take me directly into the Grade Center, and I know that something needs graded. Okay, so it's a very powerful tool, and due dates really do prompt how we see things in the Grade Center, how they're organized, and then also how we communicate that with students. And it is a policy requirement now for faculty to be able to do that. So again, we go into the course, we select grades, okay, and I have two options. I can do it by category or I can do it by due date. So I imagine if it's categories and there's not a due date, there would be a whole section of just MindTap or SAM activities. Okay. When I use this pull-down menu and I do it by due date, I now see it Module 1 kind of laid out logically for me. Okay, in Module 2 and Module 3, more of a natural progression. If something didn't have a due date, it would show up at the very end of the Grade Center view. Okay. I hope that answered the question. For a couple people who had questions about how that Grade Center works and why those due dates are so important. Okay. The one other thing I want to let you know is that when you do add something such as a third-party partner to our course menu, if it is a dark print, okay, so for example, tutor.com is one of our third-party content partners, and you'll see that is actually a bolder print. And then we have these areas down here that are kind of grayed out. If it's in a bolder or darker font, this means that it's viewable to the students in the student view. So right now in Delilah's version of this, her Cengage link is currently available on the course menu. And what we really want to do is we want to make sure the students are going through those course modules in a sequential learning pattern. Okay? And as Delilah explained to us very clearly, is that to set those items, we go to our Settings button, and we click on the Navigation button, and this is how we can move things around on our course menu, and we can make them visible to students. Okay, and anytime you alter this menu, you want to make sure that you hit the Save button. Okay. Delilah, thank you very much for letting me jump in and share that specific Ivy Tech information with our viewers. I'm going to turn it back over to you so you can continue with your part of the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to talk about the student registration process. So a couple of things about the student registration process, and we'll take a look at it by actually going out to the student view, which we know we can do that from the settings area. So within the settings area, I am going to go back to the student view. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my modules and locate a Cengage activity. So in order for students to register for MindTap or for SAM, they're going to do that by accessing those materials directly within Canvas. So students should not be going directly to Cengage.com, or they should not be going directly to SAM. They're always going to log into IvyLearn. And once they're in IvyLearn, they're going to locate any MindTap or SAM content. Again, if you're trying to establish maybe some type of best practice, I would recommend perhaps in your resources area, maybe you have a link to the SAM homepage or the MindTap homepage or the ebook that's available. And so when students click on any of those activities, it's going to prompt them to register for SAM. So at the bottom, I haven't placed this in the resources area, but at the bottom, you can recall we placed a link to the MindTap homepage. So perhaps this would be something that you would want to place in a resources area for your students just to make sure they get that registration process out the way within like that first week of class. So if I am a student and I click on any SAM or MindTap link and I go to launch that link, and just like within Blackboard, pop-ups, the students, they want to make sure they're allowing pop-ups from Cengage, otherwise it's going to prevent those windows from opening. But as you can see, when I clicked on that link as a student from the student view, it's asking for me to create a Cengage Brain account. So at this point in time, the students, what they would do is if they've never used a Cengage product in the past, they're going to go ahead and click on this create a new account. If they already have a Cengage account, then they can say, I already have a Cengage account, and they'll put in their credentials here. So creating an account is just a matter of typing in the email address they want to use, the password, and just put it in their first and last name. That's only a one-time process that they'll have to follow. Just like you as the instructor, once you enter in your credentials for Cengage into IvyLearn, you'll never have to do it again. Same thing for students. So I'm not going to actually go through the process of creating an account, but you'll see that the students, they have the option to delay this account creation process up to 14 days. So if they don't have time at the moment to create that account, they can say, I'll do it later. And then it's going to take them to the next screen, which is typically a payment screen. So most of the textbooks since Ivy Tech, most of the courses are no longer using the Include Ed program where student materials are paid for day one. Most of the students are purchasing a textbook that comes bundled with some type of an access code. So this is a screen where students can redeem that access code. So if I have an access code, I would just choose, I'm going to redeem an access code and plug it in there. And as I mentioned, we do offer a grace period. So if students, if they don't have their access code, they'll just say, I'll pay later, and then they can click go to my course, and then it'll take them directly out to their Cengage materials. So this is a new process again, because in the past we did not, in Blackboard, students were not creating Cengage accounts, but they do have to go through this one-time account creation process within IvyLearn. Again, it's only a one-time process. So even if next semester they're using an entirely different course with MindTap or SAM, IvyLearn will have their credentials or Cengage stored in, and they won't have to do that process again. Now, one of the main benefits to students creating a Cengage account with the move to IvyLearn is that if, for example, if IvyLearn was down, just like how Blackboard used to go down, students would be able to take those credentials and go directly to Cengage to access their materials. And also, we do have like a MindTap mobile app that will allow for the students to view the ebook, and if they're using MindTap, there are different study tools or reminders on that mobile app. And since they have a Cengage login, they'll be able to log into that mobile app. All right, so that's the new student registration process. Just keep in mind that the students are going to have to go through that one-time account creation process, and they'll also have to redeem an access code that came bundled with their book. The final thing I want to point out, since this training was just more of a general overview, we didn't do like a deep dive into MindTap, or we didn't do a deep dive into SAM, because this training was focused mostly on how you bring those materials into Canvas. So if you're looking for more information on how do you do certain things within SAM, or how do you do certain things within Canvas, certain things within MindTap. Maybe you want to create some additional MindTap assignments, or maybe in SAM you want to make some changes to your project. On Cengage, we do have a digital course support site. So you may want to take the address down, but it's just basically Cengage.com, Cengage, CENGAGE.com/, D as in David, C as in cat, S, DCS. So that just stands for Digital Course Support. If I go to Cengage.com, Digital Course Support, it's going to take me out to this training resources area. And within the training resources area, you can select which Cengage platform you're using. And let's see, apparently my internet is extremely slow. Okay, so at the very bottom, you're going to see a list of our different platforms. So a majority of you are either using MindTap or you're either using SAM. So let's assume you're using MindTap. So if I click on MindTap, there are some general MindTap self-training videos right here, and this gets more into like the progress app within MindTap, or managing grades within the actual MindTap gradebook, or changing assignment due dates. All of this is from within MindTap. If you want the Canvas specific resources as a refresher of some of the things that we talked about today, you can click specifically on Canvas, or I know you guys are calling, you branded it IvyLearn, but when you're looking on the Cengage Support site, you'll look under Canvas, and here we have a video that shows you how to create a course within Canvas. So that's the first thing we talked about when we first set up our course. So as you can see, that's a 4-minute video. This talks about customizing MindTap and linking like assignments over into Canvas. That's a 3-minute video. Here's a 4-minute video talking about adding the support link. So you have a couple of videos in here that are specifically related to Canvas. So initiating a manual sync. So if you find that students, they took assignments, but their grades haven't, for whatever reason, pushed out to IvyLearn, then there is a button that you can hit to force those grades out. So this is a great place for you to go. Obviously, I selected MindTap as the product, but you can also select SAM as your product to access any SAM-specific tutorials. With that being said, that concludes what I was prepared to show today, but we definitely still have an opportunity for additional questions. So I am going to open the question window to see if there are any questions in here that perhaps I missed. Kathy or Lisa, if you see any questions, feel free to let me know.
Delilah, thank you for your presentation. We'll give folks a couple minutes to ask any questions that they might like to do in the question box. It looks like Adrian does have a question. Will we be able to print out any of your handouts for students?
Oh, so that is a great question, and I'm sorry that I didn't point out. So on this particular digital course support site that I mentioned, so I'm going to go to, we're looking at SAM now, because as you can see it says SAM, and if I click specifically on Canvas and I click on student, there are some like student registration guides to help show students how they would gain access to the program. So it's still thinking, but in general, any student resources that we have available will be located on this course support site by selecting MindTap or SAM, and then you select Canvas, and then you go out to this student area, and this is going to allow for you to access those student resources. Do we have any other questions, or are there any additional questions? Not at this time, but I did want to point out to Adrian and to our viewers today that we will hope to continue to have our faculty guides and student guides available for our students like we always have in the past. And if you haven't already done so, I'm going to show you the Faculty Resource Center that's located within the IvyLearn platform. So I'm going to share my page. So right now you should be seeing my IvyLearn dashboard page. Okay. Over here on the left-hand side, this is actually our global navigation menu. And down here on the Help button, when we click this, there is a link to both the IvyLearn Student Resource Center. So we'll be trying to provide links for our students to get assistance. And there's also this IvyLearn Resource Center. And this is replacing our Click for Help tab, which is in our current Blackboard LMS.
Okay, the first time you log into the IvyLearn Resource Center for faculty, it's going to ask you to give your username and password, or your username. We verify that you are a faculty member because there's some things just for faculty eyes only. You'll usually get access within 24 hours. And then we have this really rich faculty resource area. It's very similar to the community, the Canvas communities, if you've ever logged into one of their resource areas. So this is a great place for you to get instructor guides, access to lockdown browser information, third-party content, contact information, and things like that. So I highly recommend that you get into the IvyLearn platform if you haven't already done so. Click the Help button and then select our IvyLearn Resource Center. Okay. We do have time for a couple more questions, so if you do have any questions, please go ahead and ask them at this time.
And while we're waiting on questions, if you can just make me the presenter again, I just want to make sure, I know I talked about where you can just kind of go get self-help support, but we also have phone support for instructors and for students. If you guys would like that information, I'm going to bring it up on my screen so that you can take that down.
Sure, sure. What you're looking at currently is that IvyLearn faculty resource page. There's commentary going on from all kinds of faculty from all over the state. And there's some helpful links to some documents here that's going to help you get prepared for your IvyLearn class. So there's that information for you. Delilah, just 1 second here.
Okay.
And it's all yours.
Okay, so can everyone see my screen? I think I clicked the show screen button.
You have, yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So we do have instructor support, and this is if you're having questions or concerns with when you're linking that Cengage content to IvyLearn. If you have any questions or if you're running into any issues, this particular telephone number listed here is specifically for instructors. Do not share this information with your students because then that just would be more traffic into this line, which is dedicated specifically for instructors. So this is going to be the instructor line, 866-267-4986. And then concerning student support, that telephone number is 1-800-354-9706. So in addition to your students being able to click on that Cengage support link that you can add to your course, if they just wanted to phone in directly, they can call into this number. Again, my recommendation is for them to click on that Cengage support link first, because it's going to capture certain information about them. For example, when they fill out that form, the Cengage support team will know that those students are accessing MindTap or SAM through Canvas, because the registration instructions are going to be totally different if they weren't. And sometimes when students call in, they don't always voice that, like, hey, I'm using this within Canvas. And if they don't do that, then support can likely tell them, oh, this is how you register, not realizing that they should be registering through IvyLearn or Canvas. So with that being said, have your students use that support link, but for any anxious student that just wants to call in immediately, they can use this number. And for you, your faculty support number is listed at the top. And that's all I have for today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Delilah from Cengage, for being our guest presenter today. We're going to go ahead and say goodbye for this afternoon, and we hope to see you at another webinar really soon. To exit out of the webinar, you can actually go up to the X on the GoToWebinar and click X to exit the program, and I will be glad to stay on the line for any other questions that you may have for just another few minutes.